1, 2.
So, are you a bit of a scientist, or is it your diet, or what made you choose the zinc?
Yeah, I never thought you'd ask that question. It's a long, boring story. One of my friends used to. It really is a long, boring story.
We got all the time in the world.
Okay. My name's Zinc. I'm a drum and bass DJ and producer. I've been DJing for about 15 years and producing for about 12 or 13. I started off by getting into the early drum and bass, jungle, acid house scene in London by listening to the pirate radio stations. And that was the only place you could hear that music back then. It was either there or going out to the acid house parties. So I got into pirate radio. I used to buy, I used to spend all my money on records. I couldn't afford a pair of decks because every time I saved up a little bit of money, there was just too many records that I wanted to buy. So the first time I ever played on a pair of Technics was when I got onto a pirate radio station.
Which station?
The first station I played on was called Impact FM, and it was on the top floor of a tower block in Hackney in London in a squat. So they would break down the door of an empty flat and just set up a studio, and it was usually dirty and horrible, but I did pirate radio for 7 years, and through doing pirate I met a few, I got contacted by a few promoters that asked me to come and play at their clubs, and I met somebody that had a recording studio. And he said to me, like this was like 91, 92, and in those days, if you wanted to make a tune, you needed to know somebody that had a studio, or you had to have your own studio, or you had to hire a studio. There was no, there was no sort of home studio thing. So I wanted to get into production. So this guy said that he didn't have a car, so he said if I drove him to this rave so he could give out promos, he would let me use his studio for £4 an hour.
That's a bit of a dodgy scenario, right?
No, that's, I thought it was touch. So so I did that, and I started making tracks. And I started, a few promoters contacted me and asked me to come and play in their clubs, and so one of the sort of big moments for me, and at the time I still worked full-time and in an office doing really rubbish, like filing and stuff. Like I worked there for years. I got one promotion in like 6 years or something. It's terrible. In 1995 I did a track called Super Sharp Shooter, which was quite a big drum and bass track at the time, and I haven't got it here to play.
I played it last night.
Okay, thank you. And another track I did at the time was a bootleg remix. It's not being recorded, is it, anywhere? But anyway, a remix of Fuji's Ready or Not.
But everyone on God's earth knows that you did it anyway.
Yeah. So those two tracks kind of meant I could leave my day job, just DJ and produce full-time, and from there I started a record label with two guys called Hype and Pascal, and
the dog?
And the dog Snoop. We signed a deal with BMG as Ganja Kru. So that was my first experience of working with a major record label, and then in 2000, so I've released loads of drum and bass 12s and albums, not solo albums, but been part of albums up until 2000. And then in 2000 I did an EP, and included on it was all drum and bass, but there was one track that was like a breakbeat track called 138 Trek.
Which surprisingly was 138.
138 BPM with Star Trek samples, hence the name. So I did that track, and it was when I did it, I sent it to a load of breakbeat DJs, and nobody listened to it. But the kids on the pirate radio started playing it, the UK garage kids, and it got really big, sort of organically, and then it was signed to, you know, a bigger label, and went into the charts, and then so that kind of made me realise that I could do stuff at other tempos, and it, you know, people would listen to it.
Did you get any flag from your fellow drum and bass producers?
No, you know, not anybody directly. No one
directly. It's not really the way.
No, the only thing I ever heard about it was Fabio and Groove Rider was in. Fabio and Groove Rider are two really big drum and bass DJs, like sort of the godfathers. They was in Cardiff, and Groove Rider plays house as well as drum and bass. And apparently, a kid said to Groove Rider, "Oh, what's Zinc doing? What a cunt! You know, what's he doing? Can I swear?"
Oh, well, I mean, in England, cunt is a transgender word, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So yeah, this bloke's like, "Oh, what's he doing? You know, he's making all this shit. He should just stick to drum and bass." And Groove Rider was like, "I play house, like, and what are you going to do about it?" To this kid, and apparently Fabio had to stop Groove Rider from beating up this kid. So the only thing I ever heard about it was good stuff. You know, a lot of the drum and bass people were really supportive and said to me, you know, it's really, you know, don't stop making drum and bass, but it's really good what you're doing. So I started doing breaks stuff then, and I set up a label called Bingo. And the idea with that label is that there ain't no rules. It's, you know, if I want to release house or drum and bass or breaks or, you know, whatever, I do. And so that's been going since 2000, and you know, there's good bits and bad bits about owning a label.
Well, thank you. That was the Wikipedia version. We're done now, I guess.
So that's it. Cool.
Okay,
right.
Nice one. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a good little intro and a good
that's kind
overview.
of the basic.
But where shall we start? Maybe give a bit of an audio example of some. Do you got any pre-super sharpshooter stuff with you?
No.
Is that somewhere lost in the secret basement reels?
Yeah, I mean, the oldest thing I think I've got here is the Fugees bootleg.
Both the pirate scene, both the bootlegging thing are two totally integral parts of the culture.
Massively. Well, the bootlegging maybe. The pirate radio is so important for English music. And at the moment, in the last month, there was somebody got killed in Birmingham. There was some like race riots and some real tension. Someone got killed in Birmingham, and they said that it was because somebody on a pirate radio had talked about some skirmish that had happened. So the government now has gone crazy on pirate radio, and they're trying to they've just in the last month they've gone mad. But I'm friends with a couple of people that own stations, and they just stand firm. They do their thing. I think it's really important, pirate radio. Really, really important. Well, you know, Radio 1's pretty good now. They do try and play some drum and bass. You know, they've got specialist shows. Occasionally they play stuff daytime, but for like the first 10 years of drum and bass, you just couldn't really hear it. It's like grime now. You know, the grime scene in England, it's not really getting represented on Radio 1, and you know, there's one guy on Kiss FM that plays it. But if you want to listen to grime all the time, you've got to listen to the Pirates. You know, so like in my car
that
stereo,
rhyme was a lot better than a lot of the rhymes that they spit on these tunes.
Sorry?
That rhyme was a lot tighter. And
Thanks. I've been practicing. You know, like in my car, all of the presets are Pirates. You know, it's when I go to other countries and flick through the radio, I'm sorry for the people that live there that have got this such rubbish selection of music to listen to. And if you come to London, you can listen to, you know, there's anything reggae, you know, house, techno, drum and bass, grime, hip hop, all on pirate stations. All, you know, they've got very little or no agenda as regards the playlisting. You know, they just play music that they like, which you don't really get on, you know, on Radio 1, the guy that chooses what goes on and doesn't go on is, you know, whether he's getting backhanders or whether he's got issues with certain people. It's never going to be like just pure, you know?
As we said before, it's not a totally legit scenario, but you somehow need to, I mean, it's not like you standing around Hackney and you're going like, hang on, up there on that floor there could be a radio station or something. You need to find out about these things, and how does that whole scene organize itself?
How would you get on a pirate in London? Well, you know, like you'd phone the studio while they're on air and you'd say, I'm a DJ. You know, I work quite closely with one pirate, and the way they do it is, in order for a new DJ to come on, he's got to be recommended by some DJs that are already on the station. And then if he ends up doing something stupid, then all of them get thrown off. So they only recommend people that they trust.
It's proper mafia business then.
It's not mafia, it's just, you know, they don't need somebody coming on the air and swearing or talking about drugs on the air, because then the government will, you know, will lock them down a lot quicker.
So obviously the FCC or whoever is in charge does have a certain amount of tolerance towards it.
Yeah, Ofcom Ofcom are the people that shut down the pirates, and they've got a budget. And if you go on the radio and you're swearing and you're talking about drugs and you're talking about guns, they'll put you up the list. You know, you become a higher priority for them. If you just play music and
shout-outs to the milkman and all.
Yeah, say hi to the milkman. Then I think that they don't make you such a priority. But I think, you know, I really like the pirate scene, and I don't like the way that the government are so kind of make it so hard for someone to start a radio station. You know, but so that's why that's why we have to do it.
But isn't that certain climate of paranoia that you have in England there really the one which thrives a lot of scenes? I mean, that you always have that struggle between certain parts of the authority who totally go overboard if there's a shooting or whatever, and a lot of kids who are just like,
yeah, I don't think that's just
thrive.
England, though. I think in a lot of countries people overreact and try and place the blame in the, you know, in certain areas. You know, like at the moment, because of this shooting, they're saying that all pirate radio stations earn £400,000 a year in advertising, and that, yeah, exactly, and that they're all like totally linked with the selling of drugs and with guns, gun crime. And they're saying that the parties that they advertise on the pirates, the radio stations then go down there and sell drugs. This is what they're saying, and it's just nonsense. You know, like, I know the guy that runs Cool FM, which is the biggest drum and bass pirate. It's been going 13 or 14 years. He's not earning £400,000 a year. You know, like I saw him standing outside a club 2 weeks ago with his, you know, like 6 o'clock in the morning, handing out flyers for his party. He's not. If he was earning 400 grand for the last 14 years, he'd have come down in his helicopter.
Or he'd be really dedicated.
Yeah. I mean, either that or mad. Yeah. Oh. So, yeah. So the pirate scene, I think, is really important. I think it's a shame that the government are so kind of against it, but I guess it's life.
Nevertheless, I mean, obviously you have that problem there of certain parts of the media portraying whatever people care about in a certain light to cater to their readership or whatnot.
Yeah, they just, you know, they make up lies basically. They're saying, you know, the people that read the newspapers are going to say, you know, gee, you know, these kids are earning 400 grand a year, they're not paying tax, and they're running around with guns. Well, you know, we've got to stop it. When it's just not the truth. The truth is that you know, when I was on a pirate radio, it was because I wanted to play music that I love, and nothing more.
Well, from the hardcore days onwards, especially your scene always had a really strong love relationship with the media. What were the more hilarious things that you found out about yourself?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't do any interviews for about until 2000. I did one interview, I think, ever. I just didn't do interviews because I saw how, you know, like a few times with DJ Hype, I'd be there when he was doing an interview, and I would see what he was saying and then see what they printed, and it just was just nonsense. So
maybe he was just talking too fast, or?
No, I don't. No, I think the people could. He does talk fast, but it's just the thing with journalists is that they can write whatever they want, and you know, you've got no power. All you can do is read the article afterwards and be upset about it, you know, you're at their mercy, basically. When I started doing some interviews in 2000, a couple of people, I'd read their stuff before, and I was like, if you write shit about me, I'm going to find you. And they were like, they were all right. You know, like they...
That's a very relaxed atmosphere too, yes.
No, but I was like, you know, if you write about what we're talking about now, cool. And you can quote me on anything, but don't make something up just because I'm not that interesting.
So how did you find... What were the topics that you were trying to steer towards that you felt more comfortable with?
Just talking about, you know, the music that... last time I was doing interviews was when I did an album called Faster, which was signed to Polydor, which was my second experience of being signed to a major.
I totally sense a lot of excitement in there.
Majors are arseholes, really, in my experience. Generally what they do is they sign like 5 or 6 acts at the same time, and they see which one goes, and they write off the rest. And if you're not the one that goes, it's, you know, it's just hard to... all they want is like massive instant success. They're not interested in building and working and doing stuff. So the last album I signed to a major, I ended like, they released it, but they fucked it up so much that I ended up going down there and like they'd paid me in advance. I did the album. I ended up going down there and saying, I want it back. Like I'm going to release it on my own label. I want the copyright back, and I'm not giving you the money back. And that's it. And they did. And because they're so shit, I went down. I was like, you know, sorry.
How many people were there with you in that discussion?
Just me. No, well, me and my manager. Oh. But she's more scary than me. You know, and I'm not sorry. I'm not scary. She's scary. I'm not. But like I said to the guy, you fucked it up. You know, you said you're going to do this, this, and this. You haven't. You fucked everything up. You're a bunch of idiots. And that's it. And he couldn't really argue because that, you know.
It was evident.
It was evident that they're a bunch of idiots. Yeah, but majors, I'm not really impressed with. So that's been my experience.
When do they become a necessary evil?
I think if you've got, I don't know. I think that they're more and more, they're losing their place. You know, like it used to be the majors, you couldn't have an independent label that would do anything half decent, but now. You know, like it used to be that the very good press people would be working at the major labels, but now the good press people start their own press company, and the good, you know, I don't think that's, you know, not always, but a lot of the time, and so the majors, like, they go out of house for artwork and for PR and that, and so why not just have your own label and use the same PR and artwork that they do. So I think majors are becoming less and less important.
But nevertheless, I mean, if you use XL as a showcase, that's a pretty tight organization and a tight roster. And
they're not major, are they?
No, but I mean, they do major things.
Yeah, I mean, they're a great example of how an independent can go from being, you know, a small independent label to being a force to be reckoned with. And I think the majors look at XL and wish that they could be as good as that.
How many people do you get working with you on Bingo?
I've got there's one guy full-time, and then sometimes we get kids coming in doing, you know, just doing like YTS, the sort of training, you know. But yeah, mainly one guy that does, and then we use different, like we go outside for artwork and for manufacturing and for press and for that, but I've got a studio that I use to make music and that other people can use.
Your roster is probably more extensive than, let's say, the one of XL on Bingo.
No. I mean, with Bingo, I release music that I like, and generally, like, there's only a couple of artists in drum and bass that I like everything they do. Usually what I find is that I like one tune from Caliber, one tune from Pendulum, one tune from this, one tune from that, and so I just sign tracks on a tune, like on a track basis. I'm not really, the only artist I've signed is a girl called Jenna G, and she's just finished her first solo album, and other than that,
taking care of the art direction on that one?
What do you mean, musically or visually?
Visually.
Visually, we're doing it with her. I mean, like the cover and the cover for the singles and the album are pictures of her, and we got a photographer. We got a really good photographer to take some shots of that, and then we get somebody that we know that is an artwork guy. We give them the photos, we tell them what we want, they turn it around. It was going to be some people from Germany, but they were taking a long time. They were really busy, and so we've just changed to a different artwork people. But we just, see some artwork that we like on a record label. Usually they have the email address of the person that did it, phone them up, say we want to work with you.
Now, artwork and drum and bass, that's a whole different universe of discussions as well. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is pretty basic, but then, like sometimes the last release I had, there's a graffiti kid in London and I really like, he always does this certain figure, and so I found him and said, can you do me a record sleeve? And that's what I try and do, is try and be a little bit, like try and do different things. But it's becoming harder and harder because records, like vinyl sales, are going down, and drum and bass is one of the luckier genres because we still sell a lot of vinyl, but nevertheless it is, a lot of DJs now are playing CDs rather than records, so it makes it harder to budget for, to have a big budget for artwork if you're going to sell 20% records less than 3 years ago or whatever. Does that in any way play into the decisions when you have a singer like Jenna and the way you want to portray her? I mean, you're obviously putting her assets out there and...
Putting her assets out there. We have to, we work out a budget, and we work to that budget, and that budget is based on what we think we're going to sell of that record.
Okay, does sex sell in drum and bass a lot better than graphics?
Does sex sell? I haven't bought sex. I guess, like Jenna is she's quite good looking. She's got an interesting look, and so, but we let her. I wasn't saying to her like, right now, take your top off and go and stand in front of the camera because we're going to sell 2,000 more copies.
That's a bit of a bad trade-off.
Well, I don't know. It depends, doesn't it? But no, she was in charge of how she is. And the photos have come out. They're quite sexy photos, but that was her choice. And I don't know how many people would look at the front of the CD and think, right, I'm going to buy that. Like based on the fact she's standing there with, a skimpy shirt on or something.
Can we get an innocent halo here?
Yeah, come on, man.
Okay, probably the other side of the working with Jenna thing is, I mean, obviously from flying in vocals on bootlegs or on records and the, I don't know, the Method Man things, the Red La La La, all these hip-hop samples, to working with someone like her. Can you probably fill us in a little bit about the vocal techniques that you acquired over the years? Okay,
when I started making music till about the year 2000, all I did was sample stuff, like vocals and that, like Redman, Method Man and the Fugees and this one and that one.
You never had a proper Mickey Mouse voice face, did you?
A proper Mickey Mouse voice face? No. I thought you said voice face. No. There was a lot of that in hardcore, but I never really went for the chipmunk thing. I was more like, I liked hip hop, you know, I kind of listened to hip hop before I was into drum and bass and that, so I preferred that. And but I'd always been using samples, so I'd get acapellas that had been mixed and compressed and all of it, everything, you know. So then when I did an album, I did this album Faster, and a lot of the tracks on there had vocals, and so I went into studios and recorded the vocals with proper engineers and learned how to do it. So when I came to this Jenna album, I recorded about half of the vocals.
That track was probably one of the ones where you had a lot of discussion of like how far can you take the whole thing, which probably grew out of DJs playing 1 hour sets and all in a row and having to go for a lot of instant gratification from the crowd.
Yeah.
Of like the whole breakdown, instant.
Yeah, the original mix of that I did in '95 was actually had a much longer intro. And then this mix I did in like 2002, which was using the same samples and everything the same, but it was, it had a shorter intro. It was more instant, more impact, and that's just the way that drum and bass has gone. You know, a lot of the tracks that I get now have got 16-bar intro, and then that's it, they're in. And it seems like it's designed for DJs to play in a club. You know, it's not about letting the track grow and build. It's just about having instant impact for dance floor. But you know, drum and bass, you know, mainly lives on a dance floor.
Yeah, but even within that, I mean, it's certainly a slightly different approach than, let's say, a David Mancuso or a Paradise Garage vibe, where you just build up for ages and you just...
Yeah, there's some drum and bass that I get that does build, you know, where they have like 2-minute intro, and I really like that, but there's not much like that. Most people, you know, like, if you want Andy C to play your record, and that, like, Andy C's the biggest drum and bass DJ, if you want him to play your record, it helps if it's easy to mix, you know. Like, again, I'm not saying that he can't mix. He's probably the technically the best mixer, you know, that I've seen DJing. But you know, I know from personal experience that if I've got a track that's got a simple arrangement and I know that it's going to come in after 32 bars or whatever, I'm more likely to play that because if I'm in that sort of 1 hour bang, bang, bang thing, you know, when I play like a 3-hour set or a 4-hour set, I prefer to let the music breathe a bit and, you know, the tracks go on for more than, you know, 48 bars each or whatever. But in drum and bass, it's pretty like bang, you know, like one track, another track, another track. That's, you know, that's the sort of the way the genre has sort of gone.
Did you ever have the feeling that the MC who was currently on the mic while you were playing
should go home? Yeah, yeah, quite often. I think drum and bass, generally there's an MC on drum and bass, and a lot of the time, if it's a good MC, it really takes the music to another level. A lot of the music is quite instrumental, or mainly instrumental, and a good MC really can put another layer to the music, but a bad MC can really fuck things up. And I do spend half my life, you know, like I'll play a track with a full vocal in it, and the geezer's chatting over the top of it, so there are like 2 vocals at the same time, totally clashing with each other, and I'll be standing there looking at the geezer like, and he's going like, you know, won't, you know, doesn't stop, just like, yeah, great, and carries on, and so, you know, and the guy will come up to me afterwards and go, oh, great, you know, and I'll be like, really, bruv, you've got to listen. You know, when there's full vocals in a track, you've got to shut up. And then, you know, it seems simple, but some of them just don't do it. Most of them are really good. Most drum and bass MCs are really, like, work with the music. You know, there's a few that I know that I work with that know every new tune. You know, they'll hunt every new tune down on the internet so that when they're in a club MCing, they know that track, they know when it's going to break down, they know when it's going to do this or that. But some of them are really shockingly bad.
Why does it translate so badly from the live experience to records? There's not that many drum and bass MCs that did a good record, right?
No, I know what you mean. the reason, I think a lot of them try and totally recreate what they're doing in a club. They, you know, they go in the vocal booth and they just literally start emceeing as if they're in a club. And you know, when you're in your car listening to a CD, you're not in a room with 1,000 people going nuts and all drunk. You're in your car, and it just doesn't really translate. I'm working on some stuff. I can play a thing. There's a geezer called X-Man, who's one of the sort of newest. He's in, like, 2 years ago he won Best Newcomer MC. 1 year ago he won Best MC. So he's just come straight in, and he's sort of the #1. And I'm doing some stuff with him that is where I'm trying to sort of break the mould. You know, it's not just him shouting random stuff, you know, for like...
Searching for my Rizzler.
So, yeah, I mean, that stuff's not too bad. Some of the drum and bass that's been released has just been rubbish, hasn't it? You know, like, it doesn't translate, like you say, but I don't know I don't know what I've done with it, but let me do a search. Okay. These are just demos that I've done with him. Oh no, you know what? It's not even. I haven't got it here. I thought I did have this something else, but I'm trying to do stuff with him where it's like more like chorus verse, more like better constructed. The stuff that I've got here is the sort of stuff that I'm saying is rubbish, but it's actually designed for the dance floor, and it means that, you know, like if I'm in a club, I can play the track and it's got him in it chatting, and so it's as if he was there, which is cool, and that serves its purpose, but it doesn't translate well to vinyl to listen to outside of a club environment.
Must be kind of weird for other MCs as well if they got this dude on the record doing exactly the same kind of thing that they're trying to do in that very moment.
Yeah, generally, most of the MCs that I work with a guy called Dynamite a lot, and X-Man, a guy called SP, most of and then, you know, there's GQ Fearless. There's a lot of big MCs, and as soon as they hear a vocal come in, they'll shut up, and they'll let that vocal do its thing. And then, you know, like with Dynamite, I work with him quite a lot, and he will learn in the track when it's quiet, and he'll just chat in that, you know, like, he knows that I've got one record that I play a lot that's just got 16 bars quiet, and so he will only talk on that 16 bars. And I think it works well, because it's like a different voice. So rather than listening to the same person for a couple, an hour or two, it changes it a bit.
Is there any sort of crossover with all these young Esky kids? And
Esky kids?
Yeah.
Would you mean like
the Grimes?
The Grime, okay. Yeah. I didn't know Esky had managed to get that far.
Yeah.
Is there any crossover with the Esky kids? Okay, I'll give you an example of an Esky crossover thing that I did actually bring with me. This is the Esky boy, Wiley. This is a drum and bass track I did, and Wiley came and put a vocal on it for me, very generously. Wiley is one of the few grime MCs I think that likes drum and bass. There's a few of them that do, but quite a few of them are not really into it, and so I don't think they'll collaborate that much. But I like working with them kids. I've done some stuff. There's a guy called Skepta who's part of Roll Deep, and I've done some stuff with him. I've done some grime stuff with Miss Dynamite. I don't know if that'll ever come out, but it's just kind of, we were just...
Here somewhere?
No, I don't think so. Sorry.
What do you feel like when you hear kids like JME or Kano who are slightly junior to us in their years, and when they start complaining about kids at the rave don't dance no more and la la la?
Yeah, I know what you mean. They're young. I mean, I love that grime scene. I love that, the energy that those kids have got. But a lot of the places where they go out, JME's probably 23, 24, and a lot of the kids are 16. So he's a sort of different...
So he's a god. old.
Yeah, he's a bit, you know, he can look at them and call them kids, you know. So the thing about the kids not dancing anymore, I think with grime is that with drum and bass, it's like you'll go there, if there's an MC there, it's cool, but if there's not, it's still cool. You know, like last night we were at War Rooms and there was no MC, but everyone was dancing. But with grime, they've taken it to more like a sort of, it's more like a show. You know, like I think So Solid kind of started it, and Dizzy Rascal, Wiley, where if you go to a grime party, it's like a concert. Sorry?
It's grimy.
It is grimy, but it's like a concert. You know, like everybody stands there and watches Wiley or watches Roll Deep, and I don't think kids. I don't think you know. I don't know if the kids are too cool to dance, or whether it's the sort of concert kind of thing. But there is definitely that. You know, like with drum and bass, we're kind of lucky because kids just dance all the time.
But nevertheless, there wasn't really another. I mean, it's a straight evolution from drum and bass to the extent that there was no other genre where you had so much fixation of the crowd towards the DJ. I mean, if High played the Rocket and you had like 3 screens showing what you do, and if you were a proper techno kid, you were like, that's a star, that's a rock star, that's like forbidden. And I mean, still to this day, you see most people in a drum and bass crowd facing the DJ. What's the special relation there?
I've got no idea. I've got no idea. I mean, there is...
Do they scare you when they look at you?
No. You know what? I don't look up, to be honest. I really, when I'm DJing, I really... You know, like I just think in my bedroom mixing 2 tunes, in my bedroom mixing 2... You know, like I really don't... You know, like I see a lot of DJs that kind of... sort of waving at people and doing that, and I don't really... I don't get like massively nervous, but I'm not really on the sort of... There is a sort of DJ superstar thing, and I'm not really... I think like pretty much anybody that's in that room, if they've been practicing as long as me, they'd be able to do exactly what I'm doing. And if they had done, they would have exactly the same music that I've got. So there's no reason that I am going to stand here and act like I'm really cool. You know.
Nevertheless, you would get a lot more bookings, especially since every 2 to 4 years you get like a crossover kind of success tune.
I would get more bookings. What if I looked up?
No. Oh. But I mean, compared to all the ones that've been practicing so hard.
Yeah, no, but if they were practicing, then they would be making tracks, and now and again they'd have a big one. I really don't think that anything I do has got anything to do with gift or talent or anything like that. I think I just practice a lot. I work hard. I've made a lot of sacrifices over the years, and as in that Fuji's Ready or Not bootleg that I didn't do. When I was working on that on Christmas Eve 1995, and all my friends, this was when I was sharing it in my mate's spare room, and there was like eight people all go down the pub. Come on, Ben, let's go down the pub. Come on, and I'm like, no, I'm working on this tune. I'm really into it, and they're like, it's Christmas Eve, and I'm like, I don't care. And then they come back and they're all smoking this and smoking that, and they're like, get involved, come on, man. And I'm like, no, I'm sitting here with my headphones on so that they can listen to something else, working on that track. And I think it is, you do make sacrifices. I think I could have, I think I've lost some friends that I would have had because I've just locked myself in a studio away for days and days, and missed my friends' birthdays and missed this and missed that just because I wanted to make tunes. And so that's the sacrifice, I think. But then the upside is amazing.
How do you approach when you had your odd go with the album format? How do you approach that differently to just doing a club banger?
Well, when I did an album, I approached it like, because a lot of the music I make is specifically dance floor. Like it's not designed to be listened to anywhere outside of that, really. But with an album, it was more like, what would you kind of listen to in your car, on your iPod, in your house. So I did some stuff that was not quite as aggressive, and I did stuff of different tempos. I can play one thing. I've got a track here that's a slower thing. the last album I did, the concept was that every track got faster than the one before. So it started off really slow and ended up with drum and bass. And this is one of the tracks that was quite near the start, so it's a slower one.
Will you offer that on any sort of download platforms as well?
Yeah, I want to. I want to. I mean, you know, as a record label owner, I'm aware of the way that, you know, I'm drum and bass DJs. I think are pretty much some of the last ones to be playing. Like I play all vinyl or acetate. I don't play any CDs. And I don't know if there's many DJs in different scenes that are like that. I haven't seen many lately. Most people seem to be playing CDs. And so it's a transitional period that we're going through. And so I'd like the albums that I release, I'd like them to be available to download. And I will make them available to download, but I don't know if I'll do it in a way that's got copy protection or not. I haven't really decided yet. I think that we're going to look, you know, like the whole music industry is always on the brink of collapse, isn't it? You know, since I can remember, it's always going to like crash next year. And here we are, you know, like, and so I think that we'll look back at this time and go, fucking hell, do you remember when the MP3s came out and everyone thought it was, you know, I think that essentially people will always want to make music, people will always want to listen to music, and people are happy to pay for that. And I think those three things will develop into a way, you know, when there was vinyl only and then cassettes came, you know, before there was cassettes, if you wanted to listen to someone's album, you had to go and buy the album. And then all of a sudden, I'd buy one album on vinyl and I'd like make 5 copies on cassettes for my friends, and it was like, you know, and then it was like, geez, the music industry is just going to collapse, but it didn't, you know, so I think it'll find its feet, but in the meantime, yeah, we will be making stuff available to download, and really, if I have my way, we won't have any sort of copy protection because it seems pointless.
How do you keep obviously, as you say, there's still people making great music, probably even more so than ever, because they got more chances to get it out there, but there's a whole lot of more rubbish as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The thing I noticed, you know, I used to, when I used to get acetates to DJ, I'd go to a place where they would cut the acetates, and there was one place called Music House that everybody went to, Groove Rider Fabio, Jumping Jack Frost, Randall, Ed Rush and Optical, everybody went down there.
And still it's the size of that.
Yeah, it's like a box. You know, there used to be like a queue of people out the door, and I'd get there at 1 o'clock, I'd cut 2 plates, I'd still be there at 10 o'clock waiting in line to cut my 2 plates. You know, it was shambles, but that's how you got new music. And, you know, Ed Rush would say, oh, I've left a DAT at Music House, so I'd go down there and cut his new track. And that was pretty much the only way that I got music in order to play. And then when the CD burn, you know, when you could burn CDs, people used to start sending me CDs. So I'd get 1 or 2 CDs a week from, you know, Ed Rush or this guy or this producer, that producer. And then when the broadband, you know, the instant messenger, FTP thing happened, all of a sudden now I get like at least 100 tracks a week. And I've got to listen to all of them and work out what ones I like and what ones I don't. And, you know, I think that the way that the way the technology has gone is that when I made my first track, I had to drive this geezer down to a rave so he could give out records so that I could go in his studio. And, you know, so it took me a year to sort of get myself into that situation where I could do that. Whereas now, if you know someone with a PC, you can make a tune, which is great because, you know, all you need is a laptop and you can make a tune, which is fantastic. But the trouble with that is all you need is a laptop and you can make a tune. So, you know, it's good because there's kids in like Eastern Europe and some places and Brazil where they've got no money, but now they can make music and they make amazing music. But there are, you know, like I would book in studio time 6 weeks in advance, and in that 6 weeks I'd work out what I was going to do, right, you know, and I'd make notes, right, I'm going to do something where the bass does this and where this does that, and I'd be collecting my samples, but now it's very, you know, like, you can make a tune in, you can start in 5 minutes on your laptop, and so I think that there is a lot more shit. I get sent so much rubbish that I have to sift through, and so I think generally it's good, but yeah, there is a lot more music now. And I think with drum and bass, that's part of the decline in record sales. It's not necessarily from people playing CDs. It's that, you know, like 8 or 9 years ago, you'd get 7 releases a week, and 5 of them would be good on Moving Shadow, Sub Bass, Ram, you know, Ganja, and so, and then there'd be 2 shit ones. And now there's 20 releases, but only 5 of them are good still. It's still only the 5 ones that are good, and there are just 15 rubbish ones. And a lot of kids will just sort of buy a rubbish one because it's on a white label or a test press. And, you know.
But even then, I mean, it got to the stage where you got 10 Moving Shadow releases in one box, and you were like, what? But, I mean, nevertheless, you somehow, probably it's just a clever marketing thing, as having a name which, on the list, no matter what format you will use, whether it's a record store with like folders or whether it's an alphabetically ordered list on your computer, the Z or Z or however you pronounce it will always end up last. So that's one way to stick out. But since we can't call ourselves triple A and triple Z, what are other things so that you can create to have that kind of a trademark that people will associate something good with your name and, or your projects?
I think the most important thing is having your own sound.
So what's up with the mystery of the tight old boys network and that
yeah, you know, that's nonsense, because there is, I hear that again and again about drum and bass. It's like it's a club, and if you're in, you're in, and if you're not, don't bother. But I think that that's generally people that are making music that's not that good, really. Because if you look at Pendulum, they made a track, you know, they're a drum and bass production outfit. They made a track called Vault, which was a drum and bass anthem. It was the biggest track in drum and bass, and they're in straight away. They're in. There isn't Groove Rider didn't phone up Jumpin' Jack Frost and go, "Fuck, have you heard this tune? Right, we better fucking ban these boys. You know, don't. You know, they're from Australia. Make sure they stay there. Don't let them come to England. You know, like, there's none of that. It's like, great, you're in. You know, and so that's production-wise. If you make a good tune, you're in. That's it. Simple as that. There's no trying to hold anybody back that I've ever heard of or ever experienced or noticed at all. And with DJing, you know, DJ Markey, for instance, I went to Brazil, saw him DJ and thought, fucking hell, this geezer's amazing. And as soon as he came to London, everybody...
Loved him.
Well, yeah, there's only one person that I know that was a little bit like anti-him. But I think he was, you know, that's something I heard about, and I think he was a little bit threatened by how good Markey was. And so, but you know, 99% of the people are like very welcoming. There is a, you know, I was listening to the people talking on Slarta was saying that there's no community in New York with a house, but with drum and bass there is. You know, like I had my instant messenger switched on a minute ago, and Nicky Black Market's sending me a message, like, you know, he's loopy and sending me a message, you know, how, you know, what you're doing, and on, you know, I talk to like so many people on the phone or instant messenger in drum and bass. It is a really tight community. There's not really much beef between people, but there's definitely no like boys club. If you're in, you're in. You know, there isn't. I don't think. I guess everybody's looking out for themselves, but there's not a sort of... Occasionally there are meetings. I've never been to one, but there have been a couple of meetings where a load of the drum and bass people get together. The last one was about trying to slow it down a bit, because some people felt that it got a little bit too fast, but it didn't change. You know, no one made any slower tunes, so, you know.
Just having this slightly bizarre picture in my mind of a Knights of the Table round, and like, oh no, we have to go back to 168 now.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. You know, the thing is, I could understand what they were saying. It was a couple of people that were kind of like the leaders, and they were saying, you know, the music's got up to 176, 178 BPM. There's no room to, there's no room to let the music move. There's no, it's just too fast. If you take it to 168.
That's what you got to pitch for, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, they were saying, if we slow it down, we can use more live elements. We can do this and that. But I didn't really agree with what they were saying. I think you can use live elements at 200 BPM if you want. And I think that what it was, well, the thing that I'm getting a little bit frustrated about is that all of the music now is limited and compressed really a lot, and it loses some of the soul in that process. And I think that's what they were saying, was it's just too loud and crushed. And
just back to the maximum impact thing.
Yeah, it's just, technology, over the last 2 or 3 years, the sort of, it's become part of the drum and bass sound is to have very loud mixes, and you achieve that by using limiters on your final mix or on individual sounds within the track. And I don't really like that. I don't use any limiters on what I do. I only use compression on like a live vocal or something that actually needs help with dynamics. I don't like the limiting thing, but I think that's what they were kind of getting at, was that the music is very. If you look at it on a computer screen, it's just like a fat line of just fatness, and whereas if you look, if you get an old,
some breathing and
if you look at old tunes, there's quiet bits and loud bits, and I like having quiet bits, If you don't have any quiet bits, the loud bits ain't loud. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think we're hearing you there. There's probably another mystery, is why only so little drum and bass DJs get away with playing anything else than just drum and bass.
I think drum and bass is one of the only musics that is, like, drum and bass is very separate from other musics in tempo, and on the odd occasion that I've played a different tempo track in with a drum and bass set, it hasn't really worked. I've played a set, like I played a breaks set at Fabric once. They asked me to do it, and I was like, fuck, I really don't want to, but I'll give it a go, and I spent a week getting the music together. I think that's one thing, is that, in order to, if I was going to play a house set tomorrow night, I'd be out the door now, down the record shop, because it's going to take me age, it's going to take me at least a day to get my head around the music I'm going to be playing. And so I think with drum and bass is so separate from everything else that I don't really, I listen to all music and I like all music, but I don't follow another scene close enough to be able to play it well. So, if you play house, you can play breaks in with house, or you can play like a sort of tech house tune, or a tribal this or whatever. They can kind of intermix, but with drum and bass, it's kind of like, it's like 30 BPM over there, isn't it, or 40 BPM.
So when you did 138 track, I guess you must have had the odd offer or two to play more around that range.
Yeah, I got offered more money to play that than I did drum and bass. But I thought that, but it just wasn't me,
you got the track here as an example, maybe?
It just, like, I just thought it's not me, and you can't, if you're going to play music and do it successfully, you've got to play music that you're into. And I'm into it, but in order to play, well, for a start, the drum and bass DJ bookings, I haven't got any other days free. I've got bookings now to the end of March or April, and it's always like that. A lot of the drum and bass parties book very far in advance. So I wouldn't have any time to do a break set. But if I wanted to stop doing drum and bass and do breaks, I wouldn't do it unless I could do it. Like, if I play a drum and bass set, there might be, Groove Rider might have a few tunes that I haven't got, and Andy C might have a few tracks that I haven't got, but pretty much I can hold my own. I've got enough exclusives and, you know, big tracks to be able to have a good set of music. But in order to, but that takes a lot of time. You know, like I'm always talking to people, always on their case to get this new tune, that new tune. I'm always, you know, I'm listening to 100 tracks a week to work out what one I like. I haven't got time to do that with breaks. I'd have to give something up, you know. So I'd have to stop producing in order to be able to be a breaks DJ and to do it properly.
Did the pressure to play something exclusive or new increase or decrease with more tunes out there?
I don't think that changed. I think that...
What's the lifespan of a tune these days?
Well, you know, it depends. Sometimes I get sent a track that a year before it's released, and I'll be playing it for a year, and then it gets released. And once it's released, it's kind of... generally, I won't play it as much because the chances are the guy that was on before me played it, you know. So that with drum and bass, there's a real dubplate culture of, you know, like 90% of the music I play is unreleased on dubplate, and 30 or 40% of it is unavailable to anybody else. You know, there's quite a lot of music I play that nobody else has got in the world, and I think that helps with DJ bookings. But I just play this. This is a breaks thing that I did. This is the first kind of breakbeat tempo track that I did. And after I did that, I did a load more stuff. There was the same sort of tempo, but...
Play Hello just to give an idea of that kind of sounds in that tempo?
Yeah, there's a track. Yeah, there's a track that I did called Hello that was a breaks tempo track, but like when I was doing breaks music, because I'm from drum and bass, it sounded like kind of drum and bass but slower. So this one was kind of...
I mean, that pretty much sounded like Shut Up and Dance in a way.
Yeah, yeah. So this is one that is really kind of drum and bass vibe. Drum and bass vibe, but breakbeat tempo. And those breaks things that I did, you know, I still do that stuff now. But you know, the first few I did, it was cool because it was people like Carl Cox were playing them, and people like, you know, like everybody from the sort of big UK garage DJs right through to someone like Carl Cox were all playing these tracks, and it was cool. And I didn't ever go to any clubs that were playing it. I just, you know, made the tracks and gave them to people. But it was cool because with drum and bass, you know, like I'll make a track in a week and then I'll get an acetate cut, then I'll play it on a Friday night, and then I'll maybe tweak the mix a bit, change this or change that, and then I'll give it to Andy C next week, and then I'll be in a club and I'll hear him play it. So it's very, you know, like I'm really in that, and I'm go to a lot of, you know, I'm sort of, it's like a bubble that I'm in, this drum and bass thing. But that was cool because it was like, there was music that I was making that was getting played in clubs where
There's life somewhere else.
Where, yeah, exactly. Like there's life outside of drum and bass. It was kind of, it was like I was in a kind of room, and all of a sudden somebody opened the door, and it's like, fucking hell, there's all these other rooms in the house. You know, like, it was really like that. It was a sort of wake-up call. Kind of chilled. That's one that I did. Thanks.
It's a pretty unben-like bass line, is it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I made that beat, and the stuff that, you know, like, that was more like a track that I just did more naturally. You know, some of the stuff I do is more like, how is this going to sound in a club? I better make it slamming in this bit or that. You know, it's kind of, it's like by design. You know, like I had an EP out, Beats by Design, because sometimes that's exactly what it is. It's, you know, designed to work on a dance floor, but then sometimes I don't follow that, and I just, you know, like, everything I make is always, you know, like, it's always me making the track, and it's always, you know, sometimes when I try and do more sort of mellow stuff, I end up doing really cheesy stuff, and it's like, when I'm producing, I find, like, generally I get a load of samples together and they do exactly what they want. And I think, right, I'm going to make a so-and-so tune, and it just doesn't happen, and it goes totally differently. And I just kind of go with that, you know, I kind of go with the flow. but that one was more like, I just, you know, had a vibe to make a kind of more mellow, rolling track.
Yet within the context of a club set and release and tension and build-ups and stuff, it could still probably be
a few people. Yeah, you know, like I know a few DJs that are playing that track in clubs, but it's more like the sort of the more chilled DJs like Fabio and Bookham.
A slightly different musical background as well.
Yeah, the guys that tend to play the more kind of musical drum and bass, the more mellow, chilled stuff. So that's kind of the angle that I've gone for with the Jenna album. And with that particular track, what I did was, that was just a demo, it wasn't a finished mix, but there's no harmonies or backing vocal or double track or anything. It's just one, and it's just one take, her singing it, and I really wanted to do that. Because she, you know, when I work with her, she does like 25 harmonies for every thing, and you know, I just wanted to do one that was just, you know, she's got such an amazing voice, yeah. And you know, the thing that you said about having people working with artists in studios and they're having tantrums and them being this or that, I think artists generally are, you know, like me as an artist, I'm quite unusual because I'm pretty normal, you know, like quite balanced, and I don't really have massive depression and massive elation. I'm just kind of getting on with it. But most of the artists that I work with are really like bipolar, and the thing that makes it all worth it is when they go in the box and start singing, you know. And with Jenna, sometimes she's hard to work with, you know, like she was unhappy with the mix down on one track that somebody else did, so I had to get all of the parts, and me and her mixed it down, and we were sitting there for like 8 hours, and it was hard work, but at the end of it, you know, like, it sounded really good. But the bit that always makes it kind of brings it all together for me is when they go in, when she goes in the box and starts singing. It's just like magic.
Everything is forgiven.
It's just like, you know, amazing. So with her, I'm lucky that, you know, I'm happy that I'm doing, you know, I'm releasing an album of her music on my label. I feel lucky to have been involved in the production of a lot of it. And it, you know, like when I made that beat, when she went into the box and sang that thing, I was just like, fucking hell. You know, it's just like, it's like magic.
Proper bit of real-time life advice. What does Sarah feel like when you know, you're not coming home from the studio with being with Jenna for 12 hours and stuff?
Oh, she knows. You know, I don't think she thinks I was trying to bend her over in the studio, you know. But I don't know, she might have a hidden camera in there. But no, I think, you know, my girlfriend is in the music industry, which is largely male, and so, you know, she has meetings. Next week she's going to go to New York for 2 days, and I'm going to look after the baby, and I'm not worried about, you know, if she's going to fuck him or do, you know, whatever. And I think she's pretty, you know, she doesn't think that I'm going to try and get hold of Jenna.
Did you develop, through having someone else from the industry, did you develop any sort of different approach towards the gender issue and the representation in the business as such?
Say that again, but a bit slower.
Through being very close with someone who's working in the same environment,
right,
did you develop a different sensibility towards the representation of the gender in general? I mean, how many well-known drum and bass DJs do you know who are not male? Not
many. There's like 3 or 4 in England, and you know, quite a few around the. There's a few around the world. You know, like in Nagoya in Japan, there's a girl called Asayo. That's sort of one of the biggest DJs in Nagoya. So there are places. Again, I don't think girls are discriminated against by. There's not like a boys' club. If a DJ's good, then they're good, and that's that. You know, doesn't matter what country you're from, what colour you are, what sex you are. That's one of the things that I loved about drum and bass as well. It doesn't matter what colour you are. In England, the acid house scene was pretty much the first one where there was black people and white people in the same party. Because before that, white people go to pubs and black people go to a blues party. You know, like, and the area that I grew up there was more minorities than there was majorities, you know. So there's more black people and Indian people than white. So I grew up with that being the normal thing. So then when I went into a pub and it's all white people, I'd sit there and feel really funny, like, fucking hell, this is a bit wrong, you know. And so that's what I really liked about the rave scene, was that it was everybody mixed up. And you know, and that's still now, drum and bass clubs, there is no, you know, it's very unusual to go to a club and it be all white people or all black people, and I really like that, you know. So getting back to your actual question, I think that did having a girlfriend that works in the industry change my sensibilities? I don't think I even know what sensibilities means, but I think I've got a lot of respect for my girlfriend as an individual. Yeah, as an individual, you know, with like professionally. I think that she's before she was my girlfriend, I worked with her and I saw her working, and I admired her, not only like looking at her, fancy and giving her one, but also admired, you know, like, yeah, no, I admired how she worked, and I recognised that there was definitely some things that she could do a lot better than I could do within the music industry, and I think, you know, as well as an individual, I'm not like sexist, basically. You know, the way I've grown up is in a very sort of equal sort of environment, and I don't, if the A&R manager is a girl or a boy, or, you know, a woman or a man, whatever, I don't think, oh, what the fuck does she know, she's a bird, you know. I think that it doesn't, you know, it doesn't make any difference. So I'm not like, you know, as soon as there's a girl in the studio, I'm trying to get my leg over, you know, as much as if it was a geezer. You know, I'm just, I think that might answer your question.
Probably before we open up for some over there, I mean, with that stuff, there might be a little bit of potential of A&Rs from those dubious majors calling again. And
they already are.
Over the years, you've seen quite a few circles of cycles of all of your mates getting new cars and advances and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I've been there. Been there twice. Jenna's been there once. You know, we've seen it before. There are people. There are majors right now. Because the thing is, we've got an album of full vocal drum and bass, and you know, Pendulum have just had you know, a big drum and bass album that has got daytime radio play, and so the majors, and that was on an independent, so the majors want the next big drum and bass thing, and so some of them are, you know, some of them are trying to sign Pendulum, I guess, and some of them, but I know some of them are, you know, saying to us, oh, can we hear Jenna's stuff? So, and we're like, you know, like, the thing is, after everything I've learned, if they say, we'll give you 500 grand for that album, I'm not going to just ignore it, because even though I know that the chances are they'll fuck it up, that is what majors do. They offer you a load of money, and they give you all this spiel about we'll make it really work and that, and then it's just a matter of, you know, when I signed an album to Polydor, I really thought that, like I said to my manager, what my ambition is to get the music to the most amount of people. I don't care if I earn 10 grand or 100 grand or $1 million. I just want the music to get out there as much as possible. And so my manager advised me that this was probably the best chance that it had. And in the end, they fucked it up. But I don't think it was bad advice. I think it's just life. And I think that I would say to Jenna, if we get an offer from a major to take the album, I would ask Jenna, you know, what does she want to do? Because basically it's her, you know, I've got some say over it, but really she's the artist. And so I would say to her, you know, what do you want to do?
But obviously, with having been there twice already, with a lot of the texts, the emails, the instant messages that you get, you're just like, oh, I've heard that thing before, and you know, it will be a lot easier for you to keep your calm and not getting totally overly excited.
Yeah. I mean, like the guy that runs Bingo said, oh, you know, the A&R bloke from this so-and-so record label wanted to hear Jenna's album, and I'm like, tell him to fuck off. But you know, if they are serious about it, it's hard to ignore, because
how would you recognize that they could potentially be serious about it?
They just hunt you down. They don't, you know, they don't let you. They just literally won't let go. You know, like it's like a dog fucking grabbing on your heels. They just.
All back to Snoop now.
Yeah, back to Snoop. So yeah, that's how you know, is because they're just relentless. So the thing is, you know, a major can, like with Jenna's album, it could actually go much, much further being on a major, because they've got such good international distribution and licensing. You know, like with her album, we'll probably license it to 2 other territories to be domestically released. But if it was on a major, they could do that in 12 or 13, and they could put it in the contract that by contract they must release it in them territories, and maybe that's what Jenna wants. So it's one of those things. Every time it happens, I think, oh fucking, here we go again. It's going to be the same thing, and then you have a meeting with them, and there's like I say, the A&R man at Polydor was really actually into it, and really a good person, and you know, his musical knowledge was amazing, and he's a really good DJ. You know, he runs his own club night. It's one of the sort of coolest club nights in London. So I knew that he was a genuine person, and so if you meet someone like that from a major, and they're, you know, very positive, and you know, you can get influenced by that, and you tend to forget that it's only 2 stages down the line that some idiot's going to be in charge, and they're going to not understand and not really be into it, and all they're doing is they just worry about their share price, and that's all they give a shit about. So it's one of those things. It's not just, you know, it's not just the money. The money does come into it, that majors offer, but it's also about the potential of what they can do, and you know, obviously they talk it up.
I know everyone loves Ready or Not, like, you know, the Fugees cut, and it's kind of meaningful for me. And when the Jungle Mix came out, it's a big tune in New Zealand, every fucking DJ has it. You mentioned that you know, it was played to the Fugees to see if they were into it and stuff. Can we go, like, dig a little deeper into that whole sampling thing and ripping shit off, and fucking, that's what it's all about, right? Take something you like and you make it your own and you do something with it. The original sample from Ready or Not came from Enya.
Yeah, Enya, yeah.
Enya, my old man used to play that when he, you know, have a joint or whatever. So, you know, it was with me, that sound, and it was something that I knew, and I was like, fuck, I know that little sound, what is that? Do you know the history behind the lawsuit with the Fugees and the Enya sample, the clearance and stuff? Because they never got clearance. They didn't clear it. Yeah.
They didn't clear it. The Fugees used that sample but didn't clear it, and Enya's people really don't fuck about. She's really, like, either they don't allow samples or they take 100% of the publishing, and they're really stiff. So the Fugees did it and released it, so they had to pay through the nose, because otherwise they would have had to just stop selling the record, and the record was so big, wasn't it? So I just thought it was quite funny that they didn't like the idea that they were being sampled, when like the whole strings out of that song.
Yeah, well, that's why I like thought it was a bit strange. Yeah, that they would have a problem with it when they ripped it off in the fucking first place.
Exactly. But you know, it's just fair enough. You know, the thing with sampling for me is that that sometimes, yeah, it is blatant and it's like a rip-off, and I understand that I'm doing it, and but a lot of sampling, like I take samples from really, really weird places, and I think it's kind of like carrying it on a little bit. You know, like when I always use breaks in tunes, and I try and always get the original break, and I think like there's you're taking a piece of the original. You can imagine the geezer in the studio, you know, like you had Purdy here, didn't you, before? You know, you can imagine him being in a studio somewhere, and then you're taking that and sort of time travelling it into this different thing. And I really like the idea of all the kind of different souls and vibes being mashed together in one track. And it's kind of like, it's weird, I know, but...
That brings me to my next question, actually, and this will be my last one. I'll try and make it quick. It's back to the whole thing about the music speeding up and stuff. Do you feel that it's like losing a lot of the funk that these original funk breaks had? Because that's the thing about the bingo stuff we talked about earlier on the couch. It's like it's more at the natural speed of these breaks from the funk and soul records. Do you think that all this like pendulum shit, this really popular stuff that I'm not necessarily into myself, do you think that that stuff is kind of losing the funk? And what jungle had for me was the polyrhythms, and like you could feel that shit on almost any time, but now it's just like four to the floor, almost like doom, 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 doom. It's all about the like, do you feel that it's like losing the funk and shit? What do you think about that? And the future of drum and bass, can you let us know what you reckon?
Okay, I think that at the moment the sort of trendy sound in drum and bass is the pendulum sound, and that they get their breaks from drum machines. They use drum machines, not breaks, and sub-focus as well. And I'm not really into that sound. The thing that got me into the music in the first place was the breaks. You know, like I've always just been moved by breaks, whatever tempo, whether it's, you know, from 70 BPM or 170. If there's a break, it just makes me want to dance. And so, that kind of stuff to me hasn't got the same soul, but it works really well in a club. And I think that with drum and bass, it goes. You know, there's one time when sort of hip hop samples are really trendy. Then it's jazz samples are really trendy. I think it's just. I think that at the moment, loads of producers that don't have their own very strong direction are influenced by that, and me as well. You know, like I think I'm one of the people that gets influenced by that. So you know, I've recently got a kick drum and snare out and had a go with it, but it's not really me, so I didn't pursue it. But in drum and bass, it happens every few years. There's someone comes along. Like a while ago, it was Optical and Ed Rush, and it's like they bring a new plate to the table. And everybody learns a little bit from it, and everybody steals a little bit from it. But and then there's a new flavour of the month, and everybody learns. You know, like that's just the way drum and bass goes. I think that what I learned from making music slower than drum and bass, because it was like a revelation for me when in like 2000, 2001, when I started doing that stuff. It was like you can have snares at slightly different volumes within the break, and it sounds cool. Whereas with drum and bass, you've got a kick and a snare and hi-hats, and you haven't really got room for anything else. It's really there's just not any room to. You know, I try and use different breaks and use different patterns, but generally most of my stuff, even if I use a totally different drum break, it still sounds the same. And so doing slower stuff, I really enjoyed. I enjoy making stuff slower because there's just so much more room to use beats in their more natural way.
Zinc, I really admire your work both as a producer and a label owner. I think you've really done important work in the drum and bass and the breaks field. I really like your film track on your last album with Slater John.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got that here.
Yeah, and I didn't know that the Don't Bury Me track was yours. So that's really
what one?
The Don't Bury Me track with Jenna G.
Okay, right.
The last one you played. And going again to working with vocalists and MC, how do you start working with them? Do you start with your own beats? Do they give you an idea? Do you just jam?
You know what? If someone is a vocalist and they say, "Oh, can you do me a track?" Invariably, I get Rhodes out and do some really like pissy Rhodesy thing, you know. And it's much better when I do a track and someone hears it and says, "Yeah, I like that beat," because if I sort of am making a tune for a vocalist, I tend to kind of go off on a tangent. I don't know where I go, and it doesn't really work. So it's much better if I just do some instrumentals. And then, like with that Don't Bury Me track, that was meant to be an instrumental, just like a nice B-side. And Jenna heard it, and she was like, "Fucking hell, give me that." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I've got the Slarta John thing. I did a track with him on on an album I done, and the thing with drum and bass is that it's one of the kind of things as a DJ you try and do is get specials and get exclusives. So the one with Wiley on it from Roll Deep, he's saying my name in that, so that's exclusive. Nobody else has got that record, and it adds to, you know, like if you come and see me DJ, you know that I'm going to play music that you won't ever hear anywhere else. And so Slarta John is the guy that did Jump and Shout for Basement Jaxx, and when I was doing a track with him, I said to him, can you do me a special? And he said, yeah, sure, and now I've lost it. He said, yeah, that he was like, yeah, cool, run a track and I'll do your special. So he did Jump and Shout, but he put my name in it, and so nobody else has got it, and this is...
So what do you do when you pester a vocalist to get you an exclusive? And
every vocalist I work with, I'm like, now do me, come on.
yeah, but I mean, if you hunt someone down and because you heard his voice somewhere and you really want him to be on there, and it's this big hassle you have to go through, and then you get the thing back and you're like, oh no.
You know what?
Could be both, right? It's not that much of a difference.
With Slarta John, like every vocalist that pretty much that I've worked with, I thought there's no chance that they're going to do this, but fuck it, I'll ask them. And invariably they've said yeah, so, and I've been really surprised and very sort of flattered that they were up for doing it. And you know, I was really happy when Slarta John did me that vocal, and basically I built that track. I got an old track that I'd done that has a similar vibe and rebuilt the track around his vocal.
But with the Wiley thing earlier on, for example, if you just had the a cappella of the original What You Call It, you might have had a better track in the end if you did it yourself. But obviously you got the MC in there and you're like, oh yeah, but it's exclusive, so how do you go about it?
No, you know, the thing, I was in the studio recording something else with Wiley, and I said to him, do us a special. And he was like, yeah, cool, run the track. And he was... There's a bit on that track that I didn't play, the Wiley one, where he'd done the Who Ate All the Pies as well. So he just did a few of his when I get people to do specials, I like them to do one of their tracks so people know it's them, but with my name in it, and then it's like perfect. And you know, there's quite a lot of stuff that I've got like that will never come out. You know, I've got another one that where I got. There's a track that I did, and I got a special of it.
It's not the worst thing for someone who claims to never get out of his sad and lonely studio box to have all these records with his name on it, eh?
Yeah, but you know, I love that. I love having specials, and I think it's good for, you know, it's good
for your ego.
It's great for the ego, makes me feel good. I think it just helps for DJing if you've got tracks that nobody else has got.
Well, give the man a hand for being...
Thanks.